Yes, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert K. Sakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Friday night with about 2 minutes to the top of the hour. We do come to you early on Fridays. For those of you that are routine members on the channel, do know that on Fridays we come at 9 p.m. East African time because of other preset engagements for Friday. Otherwise, I hope you've had a wonderful day. Thank you so much to all of those that are joined our conversation in the morning, those of you that were part of the conversation last night. It's always a pleasure to have you around. People like Pedri, people like Just for the Laugh, people like Isabella Martin, people like Pedri Bola, and every single one of you out there that joins our conversations whenever you do join them. Tonight, I want to send my special regards to my colleague and friend, Mwami Isaac. Thank you so much for the continued love and support that you are rendering to the channel. So I hope you continue with the same spirit. For those of you that recently subscribed to the channel, I say welcome to the Football Tribe UG community. I hope you get to enjoy, you stay with us, and you get to love what we do on a daily basis. It's a football channel. We get to talk about football. We get to talk about the things that are making the news or the headlines in the world of football and all things on that matter. If you're a colleague from TikTok, for those of you with whom we have conversations on TikTok, it's a pleasure to have you on the channel as well. So once again, we'll be going through what's to come over the weekend. Of course, in the UK, it's going to be all about the FA Cup for the fourth round over the Spanish La Liga. Action is going to be taking place. Of course, Barcelona last night on the receiving end of a 4-0 drubbing at the hands of Atletico de Madrid in the first leg of the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey. So we will get to so we talked about that, but we'll be looking at what their responsibilities will be going over the weekend. Next week, the UEFA Champions League does return, of course, at the playoff rounds. So that means if any of those teams, if any of your team is engaged in the UEFA Europa League playoff round, then be sure that perhaps it could play with a certain reservation, or you could see some player rotations, depending on what your team's aspirations could be for, excuse me, for the remainder of the season. Anyways, so with that said, in the morning, for those of you, just for purposes of recap that were part of the conversation, we did dig into insights for the decisions made by the Federation of Ghana Football Association's disciplinary committee in deciding that Vipers had lost their game against Kitara by forfeiture, and we got to see the disciplinary action. And then that Kitara also won their case with KCCA for fielding an ineligible player in Patrick Kadu, the former KCCA striker. Well, unfortunately, our Federation of Ghana Football Associations is never without controversy, is never afraid of making unpopular decisions or decisions that contravene their own precedents. But it's football. It has ego to it. It has backpulling and things like that. Sometimes you do get frustrated by how affairs in our domestic game are run, but it is what it is. So tonight, we'll be talking about Tottenham, who have agreed a deal with Igor Tudo, the Croatian gaffer, to take on the reins at Tottenham Hotspur as an interim boss until the end of the season. We'll be discussing that in this broadcast. So I think without wasting any further ado, let's start right from there, because Tottenham Hotspur have reached an agreement or a deal in principle with former Juventus boss Igor Tudo. For those of you that do not remember, Igor Tudo took charge of Juventus when they part ways with Massimo Allegri, or Maximiliano Allegri, who is currently at AC Milan. That was in March 2025. He came on as an interim. He got them the desirable results. Then fast forward, when the season ended, immediately after the season, I think they had about 2 or 3 weeks thereabout to then prepare themselves for the extended version of the FIFA Club World Cup that was, involving of teams from multiple continents. You remember it was in groups. We had, I think, as many as what? As many as 32 teams taking part. So Juventus decided, instead of looking into the market to get a new manager straight away, why not continue with Igor Tudo, who had gotten us the results? They did fairly okay in the FIFA Club World Cup. I think they ended, was it at the quarterfinals? So, but then they stuck with him for the rest of the season, or for the start of the new season. They gave him a contract. Unfortunately, by October, he was shown the exit, because in the last 8 games he was in charge of Juventus. They managed only 5 draws and 3 losses without a win. So they decided that our results were not going his way. So they part ways with him, and that's the manager that Tottenham Hotspur are looking to appoint there. Hi, Pedri, you say it's 11:34 p.m. here. Oh, all right. For us, it's 9 p.m. It's 9 p.m. 4 minutes past 9 p.m. Yeah. On Fridays, we come early because of other engagements thereafter. So, according to David Austin, he says that Tottenham Hotspur reached a verbal agreement with Igor Tudo to become interim head coach. 47-year-old Croatian is set to join Tottenham on a contract to end of the season. No permanent option. Arrives with big club experience. Process led by the CEO, that's Vinay Vektishim. If you're an Arsenal fan, you're probably familiar with the name, as well as the sporting director. Is called Johan Lang or Lange, depending on how you pronounce that. So I don't think there's any manager, experienced or otherwise, that is going to come into Tottenham Hotspur and is going to have an easy ride, because some of the problems that Tottenham Hotspur have had to deal with this season go beyond the manager. For example, for all the things that Thomas Frank failed at, including building the team with a clear identity of play. You're from Nairobi. Not Nairobi, I'm from the neighboring country, Kampala, Uganda. So Uganda is the country. So Kampala is the capital city, Uganda is the country. So we are in the East African region. That's why I often say East African time, because Nairobi is the time zone that you will oftentimes find on international timelines to indicate the time zone around the area of East Africa. Yeah, so that's the area. So like I was saying, while Thomas Frank failed to establish a relationship between him and the Tottenham fans, failed to establish a clear identity for the team through which they played, and that results never went his way. That in 17 games, they only won 2 games. And for all those problems, you can't blame on him. Really, they were thriving in the UEFA Champions League, where they finished 4th on the league phase, having won, I think, 5 games, drew 2 and lost only 1. You ought to remember that injuries were a major part of that. One of his goal scorers in Dominic Solanke was out through injury for an extended spell of time, and we saw also what his impact was when he returned from that injury. Then on the other side, you had Richarlison, who had scored, I think, about, was it 8 or 9 goals, for him. He also got injured, and then it became tricky. You have very crucial players like Dejan Kulusevski have not kicked a ball under Thomas Frank because they've been out through injury. James Maddison last kicked a ball in their preseason friendly in June against Newcastle when he suffered his anterior cruciate ligament injury. So, and then in and out of the team, you have the likes of Christian Romero for both injury and continued suspensions for his red cards. You have Christian Romero, who is the team captain, often issuing statements to lash out to the board. You have Mickey van de Ven, who's also been in and out of the team through injury. So these have been a major part of that. The likes of Uvis Bissoma, Rodrigo Bentancur, Lucas Bagville, they've all suffered injuries at a certain period of time. And that, for a new manager, whereas injuries are part of the game and you ought to deal with it, surely you're bound to struggle. you're bound to struggle, because we know for a fact that Tottenham do not have a playmaker. The playmaker they have is James Maddison, and they missed that. We know that Tottenham Hotspurs failed to get a playmaker in the transfer window. They had two targets. Morgan Gibbs-White deal failed, collapsed, because Evangelos Marinakis intervened, and the player ended up signing a new contract at Nottingham Forest. We know for a fact that they tried to sign, what's his name? They tried to sign Eberechi Eze, but because they stole that deal, he ended up going to Arsenal, and things like that. So we know that they wanted to sign Antoine Semenyo, Brian Mbeumo, they missed out on all these targets for whom Thomas Frank wanted to sign, So you have a manager who is missed out on majority of his key signings that he would have loved to have. You have a manager that has had to deal with so many injuries in the squad. You have a manager who from the onset, some fans or many of the fans thought he was already out of his depth and never supported him. You have a manager who has a dressing room to convince, because he said by his own words that he thought some of his players thought he wasn't up to beat. Like they didn't feel he was worthy of the job. Are you saying you should do watch-alongs, USS tags in description and hashtags? Well, I do the watch-alongs. Last night we were here for a watch-along. In fact, for 3 days this week, right from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we've been doing watch-alongs there. So we do them whenever we can, and usually even for the UEFA Champions League, UEFA Europa League nights, we do watch-alongs, for those respective nights. But thank you so much for that suggestion. I only further reaffirms the decisions that we are already making for this channel. So, whether you are going to look to bring an experienced Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte, all managers that Tottenham Hotspurs have had, the key thing is that without certain players, you're bound to struggle. Yes, I understand when you say hashtags. So you're bound to struggle at some stage or at some level. It's part of the game. It's part of it. Of course, there are things we can't fault Thomas Frank for. That's without a doubt. There are things we'll fault him for, because first of all, I thought he got it wrong when he chose Christian Romero to be his captain. He failed to keep him in check, because constantly he ran his mouth loose in attacking the board. So that didn't do him any favors. Then we all know the honest mistake of him, carrying an Arsenal coffee cup in their trip away to AFC Bournemouth. Unfortunately for them, they lost that game with literally one of the last kicks of the game, when Antoine Semenyo scored in his last game in Bournemouth colours before making the move to Manchester City. So in the end, it had to end for Thomas Frank. Now, Igor Tudo is the man set to come in there on an interim basis until the end of the season. And they are being very emphatic on the fact that he is coming on an interim basis. They want to give themselves time in the summer to find the perfect manager. Now, who is Igor Tudo? Like I said, he did manage Lazio for a spell last year of about, between March and October. He managed Lazio in 2024, guided them to a UEFA Europa League finish. Previously, he's managed clubs like Hellas Verona. He managed Udinese, who he saved from relegation back in 2018, and things like that. In 2022, 2023, he managed Olympique Marseille, who he guided to a third place finish in the French League One. So he's a manager with a bit of experience. He did play for Juventus, I think between 97 and 2007, or I think between 97 or 98 until 2007. Also, he had been part of Andrea Pirlo's coaching staff as an assistant during the 2020-2021 campaign. You remember Andrea Pirlo was given that job, and he did not stay to live his first anniversary as head coach or manager, because he was equally shown the exit. So really, these things do happen, but we're talking about a manager that comes with a fair share of experience in as far as management is concerned. In Scotland, in Croatia, he won the Croatian Cup. You have to go back to, I think, 2013 when he managed a team called Hajduk. I'm sure that's not the Croatian pronunciation of the team, but that's the best way I can pronounce it. In Greece, he managed a team called PAOK, but also in Turkey or Turkey, he managed Galatasaray. So he has a fair share of experience, although he's not proven himself to be a great winner. All Tottenham can hope for is that he will be a great tactician in their next, because he's going to have responsibilities in the Premier League, for which they still have 12 games to play, and then in the UEFA Champions League to see how far they can go. They already qualified for the round of 16 and are waiting for the playoffs to end to determine who they will be facing at that stage of the competition. Anyways, away from that, Manchester City midfielder has been charged by the Football Association and is facing a ban after he's being charged by the FA for misconduct because of his post-match comments when he said that he does expect referees to be neutral when he went to make comments such as that he said, I know we've won too much and the people do not want us to win, but the referee has to be neutral. And for me, honestly, it's not fair. It's not fair because we work so hard in these situations, and now to take these decisions, we have to move on. So, in other words, he made those comments in the aftermath of their 2-2 draw against Tottenham Hotspur, in which he thought or he judged that it should have been a foul, and rightly so, for Dominic Solanke on McKay before he goes on to score that first goal against Manchester City in that 2-2 draw. So, and I remember when I made the submission on this, and I said, while I agreed with Rodri that it was a foul on McKay by Solanke, he did not have the moral authority to come and lecture us about the referee being neutral. Ever since then, I've been calling to challenge him, at least from my forum here, to challenge him to come out and make the same comments in the aftermath of their 2-1 victory at Anfield. We saw so many decisions that did not go Liverpool's way. Liverpool should have had the penalty in that one. McKay could have been sent off with the red card. He never came out on that. Not over the weekend, but just the other day on Wednesday, Phil Foden should have gotten a red card. But then, it's all good because the decisions went their way. It's simply convenient. And I've said this before and I'll continue saying it. An injustice on one of us is an injustice on all of us. One bad decision that affects another team, it's only a matter of time before it turns around to you that the decision will come to affect you on the other side. So it simply, for me, boils down to that. Unfortunately, and again, we've been wondering how come the FA has not come out to charge Rodri? So he's facing a potential ban. I think he has tomorrow or a couple of days to appeal, his decision or to put in his response for being charged by the FA there in the UK. So he has until Wednesday. Actually, he has until Wednesday, February the 18th. That's when Arsenal will be playing against Wolverhampton Wanderers to provide a response, but he's being formally charged by the FA. So we know that players previously have received match bans for such comments or for what is believed to be unprofessional conduct or misconduct, as often described by the FA. Anyways, we'll move away from that. Like I told you, this weekend for the UK, it's going to be the FA Cup. But before we get to the weekend, with the FA Cup, there are fixtures tonight from the different leagues. In the Spanish La Liga, Elche are up against Osasuna at 11 p.m. East African time, while Borussia Dortmund at 10:30 p.m. will be up against Mainz in the German Bundesliga. In the Italian Serie A, Pisa will be up against AC Milan, while in the French League One, as we speak, Stade Rennes, that game is goalless against Paris Saint-Germain, while later on at 5 minutes past 11 p.m., Monaco will be up against Nantes. In the FA Cup, some games will be played tonight, and Chelsea will be up against Hull City tonight, and then Wrexham will take on Ipswich, both games kicking off at 10:45 p.m. East African time. So do not miss out on all that action as far as tonight goes. So I think I need to refresh my page here on the FA Cup fixtures. So yes, so in terms of the FA Cup, action does continue tomorrow. That's Saturday. We'll have games between Burton will be taking on West Ham at 3:15 p.m. At 6 p.m., Norwich City will be up against West Bromwich Albion. Southampton will take on Leicester City, while Burnley will take on Mansfield Town. Excuse me. Man City will be up against Salford. Man City at home. Aston Villa take on Newcastle at 8:45 p.m. So that's the biggest FA Cup game of the weekend, or one of the biggest, in my opinion, at 8:45 p.m. And then at 11 p.m., Liverpool will be up against Brighton and Hove Albion at 11 p.m. That's on Saturday. Then action will continue on Sunday at 3 p.m. Birmingham will take on Leeds. Grimsby Town will be up against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Stoke City, the Grimsby Town game against Wolves will come at 4:30 p.m. Then Stoke City against Fulham will come at 5 p.m., as is Oxford against Sunderland, while at 7:30 p.m., Arsenal will be taking on Wigan Athletic. Then Mansfield Town will take on Brentford at 10:30 p.m., while at a quarter to 11 p.m., that's at 10:45 p.m., Port Vale will be up against Bristol City. So those are the fixtures that will be coming your way in as far as the FA Cup is concerned. We won't do, the routine match-to-match kind of analysis that we often give you when these kinds of fixtures are coming, usually the Premier League, until maybe the competition reaches the later stages, because we still have about 16 games to be played. This is 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Yeah, 16 games to play. That means 32 teams. So we need to get 16 off, and we go to the round of 16. Then maybe at the quarterfinals, semifinals, we'll begin doing that for you. But one key thing to note is because majority of these teams do not have a lot of responsibilities in the middle of the week, they're going to have to wait until the weekend to play their next games. You could expect some fairly strong squads or teams that will feature in those games. Let me see if we have a starting lineup or out for the Chelsea game, or we have something. Okay, the lineups are not yet out, but we know Chelsea has their injuries. Romeo Lavia, Levi Colwill, Jamie Gittens with a hamstring injury, Philip Jorgensen with a muscular injury, Dario Isugo with a thigh injury, Caleb Willie with a back injury. So, anyways, the point is that one, I think only Newcastle have Karabakh in the middle of the week. That's for the UEFA Champions League playoff. So they have a game against Aston Villa, and Aston Villa side who not too far back beat them by 2-0 at St. James's Park. We know that Newcastle have had their fair share of injury struggles here and there, and in addition to a lack of form with some of their key players or summer signings, Nick Voltmada, Yohan Wissa, Anthony Elanga, Jacob Ramsey, even though he scored, against Tottenham Hotspurs, those kinds of players. So they will. I do not envision Newcastle beating Aston Villa because of the concerns. Like I said, I think their primary focus or mental state or psychological state is going to be more geared towards looking forward to that game in midweek, but also because results have not really gone, Ed Howe's way, because over the weekend they lost to Brentford by 3-2. It goes without saying that he was overly self-critical, and he knows that every game he wins is a plus to his CV when he's staring down the barrel of a sack at the end of the season, because if it doesn't perform for all the investment that has been made in the club, they could choose to part ways with him at the end of the season. So there's that bit of expectation. So he has a lot of responsibility weighing on his shoulders. But like I said, if you're Ed Howe, unfortunately, as much as you have a bigger chance of winning the FA Cup than you do have of winning the UEFA Champions League because of the monetary value attached to the UEFA Champions League, but also what it would mean for the club, because perhaps, let's say, they do not do well in domestically. If they go far in the UEFA Champions League, maybe get to the quarterfinals and maybe even the semi-finals, you never know, they could have a change of heart or assessment on his performance for this season. So it's going to be a huge responsibility. For Unai Emery, they're not involved in any playoffs because they finished, was it second on the UEFA Europa League table? So they already qualified for the round of 16. So the only game they have to worry about is the FA Cup. And for a manager like Unai Emery, he knows that the FA Cup presents them with an opportunity to possibly win a piece of silverware, especially for a cup competition that Crystal Palace won last season, So he'll have that at the back of his mind and will go really for the jugular trying to win that game. Or in midweek, they beat up against Brighton by 1-0. That goal scored by Tyrone Mings late on in the game, So he needs to find a way. So it won't be an easy game, but I do fancy Aston Villa to go through at the end of the day. Hull City against Chelsea tonight. Liam Rosenior, the Chelsea manager, is going to be up against his former side. Liam Rosenior played in the FA Cup final of 2014 when they met Arsenal, which they lost by 3-2. For those of you that remember, goals are from Santi Cazorla, and I think the other was it by Aaron Ramsey, among the goal scorers for the Arsenal, as they beat up against Hull City by 3-2 to win the 2014 FA Cup. So he was part of that. He also, so he's going to be back to familiar territory when it comes to Hull City. But Chelsea will be hoping to recover from their midweek disappointment with that 2-2 draw against Leeds United. These cup competitions are going to be very crucial for a manager like Liam Rosenior because the job in itself comes with a lot of pressure. And I've said this before, Chelsea, for all the criticism you may have against them, I do not remember the last time they went 3 seasons without a trophy. Somehow they managed to conjure up something and win a piece of silverware, whether it's the Carabao Cup, where last season we saw them win the UEFA Conference League and the FIFA Club World Cup and things like that. So Jesus, hi. ETH has more trophies than Arteta. Erik ten Hag has more trophies than Mikel Arteta. That's true. He won the Carabao Cup in his debut season, and then he won the FA Cup in the subsequent season before being sacked in November of his third season in charge at Manchester United. So that's a statement of fact. So if you're a manager like Liam Rosenior or any manager whatsoever, I've said this before, majority of those teams in the Premier League start the campaign knowing that they are not going to be in the title race for the Premier League title. They are playing for their survival. They're playing for a good place finish, perhaps qualify for a place in Europe, maybe the Champions League, maybe the Europa League, maybe the Conference League, and finishing in a good place because it has a monetary resource attached to it in terms of how high you finish on the Premier League table. So, but it is in the cup competitions where they know they can compete. Last season, we saw Newcastle win the Carabao Cup. We saw, the Eagles of Crystal Palace win the FA Cup. Those 2 domestic cup competitions were won by mid-table teams. Then, so that's why they value these competitions, and oftentimes they'll give them their best. It may not end with the most desirable results. Look at a team like Brighton. They beat up against Manchester United by 2-1 to get to this stage. Unfortunately for them, they were drawn against Liverpool because that's too strong an opponent, especially back-to-back early in the competition. You'd also want relish an opportunity, maybe even though it feels a bit unfair to championship teams and teams from League 1 and League 2 to be drawn against Premier League teams, but you'd fancy having a lesser team, because then you get maybe to rest a little bit your players, you get to rotate them a little bit. The energy that you may use to beat up against a Mansfield Town may not be the same that you require to knock out a Liverpool. So, and in that kind of sense, so for Liam Rafinha, I know he will rotate his team, but he's going to bring a fairly strong team because he knows qualifying for the 50th round of the FA Cup is just as important. And he would want to continue with that good form that he's had at Chelsea, because in 10 games, he's won, I think, about 7. Is it 7? Yeah, he's won about 7. One in the FA Cup, 2 in the UEFA Champions League, and 3 in the Premier League. He's drawn 1. That's the 2 all draw against Leeds in the Premier League, and then he's lost 2 in the EFL Cup when they were getting knocked out home and away at the hands of Arsenal in the Carabao Cup. So this is another opportunity for him to put a decent result on the board. Then you look at Liverpool, who play tomorrow at 11 p.m. East African time. The kind of pressure that is mounting on the shoulders of Arne Slot is there for the world to see, because results have not gone his way. Because we're talking about a manager who has about 20 points from the last about 20 games. I mean, it's not pretty. So there's a pressure piling on his shoulders. He'd want to prove a point. And while they are still in the UEFA Champions League, and because of their pedigree, you give them a chance that they can go far in that competition. The kind of football that they oftentimes play has been far from convincing, to say the least. So you can only hope that they can use the same energy that they used against Sunderland to beat them by 0-0 at the Stadium of Light, to become the first team this season to win a game at the Stadium of Light, thanks to that goal by Virgil van Dijk, the header, to try and inspire themselves into a victory against Brighton and Hove Albion. We're talking about, 1, the game is at home. 2, of course, players like Dominic Szoboszlai are going to be suspended, as they were for the game against Sunderland because of his red card against Manchester City. But we're talking about a team that has been a bit unlucky with injuries equally, because every player that played in that right back position is currently injured. Conor Bradley, Jeremy Frimpong, more recently, Wataru Endo got injured in that game against Sunderland. And then, but the good advantage for them is Joe Gomez is back. So this is the kind of game, perhaps you give Georgi Mamadashvili a chance, Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahim Konate, since you do not have responsibilities in midweek, so you have an entire week's rest. Then you bring in Andy Robertson at left back. Then you play Joe Gomez at right back. Your midfield, go with Gravenberch, McAllister, Curtis Jones, and then maybe you have an Hugo Ekitike, you have Federico Chiesa to start in that game. You have Mohamed Salah, and then on your bench you have a Franvich, you have a Cody Gakpo, you have a Ryong Moha, and those kinds of players. On the side of Brighton, they would set up strong. You'd expect to see players like Lewis Dunk, Matt Bruggen in goal. What's his name? I'm forgetting his name. But you'd expect to see players like Carlos Baleba, Yassine Ayari, Yankuba Minte, Danny Welbeck, Kaoru Mitoma, for Bournemouth to really set up to set up John Van Hecke, Van Hecke, to set up with a very strong side that can compete with this Liverpool side, because it's one Premier League opponent versus another. So yeah, that's the expectation there. On the side of Man City, I remember, I think in the third round, they met Exeter City, who they beat by, was it 10-1? Really? So Man City really go strong in these cup competitions. They will bring in a couple of youngsters. Maybe the likes of Max Alenya will play. But players that have not been playing so often, the likes of Ryan Ashnory, even though in recent times he's been playing, will play Nico O'Reilly to play in the 10. Unfortunately, Divine Mukasa was sent on loan to Leicester City, but those are the kinds of players that you would see on a given day. But you'll see the Omar Mamouche start this kind of game. You could see a Phil Foden in this game, So Pep Guardiola will do a blend of a strong team with some youngsters in there against Salford. Then you'll have, what's his name? The goalkeeper. Forgetting his name. James Trafford, yes, signed from Burnley. So players like James Trafford, you could see Nathan Ake in the back line. Ruben Diaz may not be risked. Maybe Nathan Ake alongside Max Alenia, Ryan Ashnori. I don't know who they will slot in at right back. Could be a Matthias Nunes. A midfield, you will see a Nico Gonzalez. You will see a Tijan Wayanda start in that game. And then a Nico O'Reilly, like I said. And then up front, you see an Omar Mamush. You could see a Phil Foden. And who else? Ryan Chucky starting. You never know. It's Pep Guardiola. He could choose to go strong. So that's the expectation on that regard as well. So then for the likes of Arsenal on Super Sunday, the expectation is a huge rotation from the team that played against Brentford in that 1-1 draw on Thursday night. You expect to see Kepa Arrizabalaga in goal. Expect to see Ben White at right back. Expect to see maybe Piero Hincap alongside Christian Mosquera in that back line. Expect to see Mazlou Skeri at left back. Expect to see Christian Nogard in midfield. Expect to see him alongside who? Because I wouldn't play Zubimendi. I wouldn't play Rice. Expect to see him alongside Ebeleche Eze. Expect to see players like Gabriel Jesus start. Expect to see a Gabriel Martinelli in there. Expect to see Enoni Madueke in that game. Who else? I'm looking to complete that midfield. You never know. Maybe he throws in a youngster there. So anyway, whichever way it may slice, because the reason as to why I struggle to complete that midfield is because Kai Havertz is injured. Martin Odegaard just returned from injury. You do not want to risk him in an FA Cup game against Wigan, which is even at home. Bukayo Saka has just returned from injury, so you don't even start him. Don't even think about it. Give Leandro Trossard the rest. Give Non Madueke has to play. He's not played too much football this season, so because so he has to play and things like that. So expect a very changed Arsenal starting 11, but that one that is good enough to go ahead and win that game. So in this round, expect predictions. One, I expect Brentford to go through against Mansfield. I expect Bristol City to get maybe the better of Port Vale. Arsenal to go through at the expense of Wigan. Sunderland to get the better of Oxford United. Fulham to knock out Stoke City. Wolves, for everything that they've had gone wrong for them this season, at least beat Grimsby and go to the next round, Give your fans something to celebrate through this season, because losing to Grimsby could be another gut punch for Rob Edwards. So I'll fancy, Wolves there. Leeds United against Birmingham City, that's going to be a difficult game, really. It could go either way, but I'll fancy Leeds. Liverpool Brighton, I'm more inclined towards Liverpool. Man City Salford, I think that's self-explanatory. Man City. Aston Villa against Newcastle, like I said, I expect Aston Villa to get the better of Newcastle. Southampton versus Leicester City, one of the most difficult games there are but recently we saw Southampton complete a comeback against Leicester City. Leicester City led their game by 3-0 and Southampton won the fixture by 4-3. So another bit of a difficult one. Anybody can go through. Burnley against Mansfield Town. Burnley, give yourself a chance. West Brom against Norwich City, difficult game. Anybody can go through. Ipswich Town against Wrexham, no difference there. Two championship teams. West Ham to get the better of Burton. Hull City, Chelsea, I go for Chelsea. So those are my predictions for the teams that I expect to advance to the 50th round of the FA Cup. And by the end of Sunday, we will have known what teams have qualified for the 50th round and when the 50th round perhaps will be played, with the draws being conducted either later that night or sometime early Monday. And then quickly, for the weekend still, elsewhere in the other leagues, oh, just a second. Oh, maybe. Meanwhile, Stade Rennes are leading PSG by 1-0. Tamari, the goal scorer in that one. So I'm trying to see, maybe, just maybe, because usually these days not yet. Anyway, let me see if Chelsea's starting 11 is out. Maybe we can have a soundbite on that before we move on to all the action that we expect from elsewhere in Europe. We're going to look at the fixtures in the Spanish La Liga. We'll look at the German Bundesliga, the Italian Serie A, and the French League One as well. I'm trying to check to see if they are, their starting 11 is out, because we're almost an hour, maybe an hour and 5 minutes away from kickoff, and sometimes those lineups come out a little bit early. But looks like they've not yet communicated anything. Anyways, maybe by the time of the end of this broadcast, they'll have communicated something. So let's move on to tomorrow. Like I said, in the Spanish La Liga, Espanyol will be up against Celta Vigo at 4 p.m. At a 6:15 p.m., Getafe will take on Villarreal. Deportivo Alves will be away to Sevilla at 8:30 p.m., while Real Madrid will be at the Santiago Bernabeu to take on Real Sociedad at 11 p.m. East African time. Then in the German Bundesliga at 5:30 p.m., Bayer Leverkusen take on St. Pauli. At the same time, Eintracht Frankfurt will be up against Borussia Mönchengladbach. Hamburg SV will take on Union Berlin, while Hoffenheim will be up against Freiburg. Werder Bremen will be up against Bayern Munich. Very big game there. Then at 8:30 p.m., VfB Stuttgart will be up against FC Cologne. So that's the action you should expect from the German Bundesliga. In the Italian Serie A, Como will be up against Fiorentina. Lazio will take on Atlanta. The Como game is at 5 p.m., while Atlanta game is at 8 p.m. And at 10:45 p.m., we have a big game between Inter Milan and Juventus in the Italian Serie A. So mark that game on your calendar. I hope I do not forget this one. I would be really, really interested in watching this game. Inter Milan versus Juventus at 10:45 p.m. Then in the French League One, Olympique Marseille at 7 p.m. tomorrow will be up against Strasbourg. We know that Olympique Marseille part ways with their manager in Roberto Di Zerbi earlier on this week. Lille will be up against Brest at 9 p.m., while Paris FC will take on RC Lens. That's for the French League One. That's on Saturday. Then on Sunday, here's what's to come in the Spanish La Liga. Rio Oviedo at 4 p.m. will be up against Athletic Bilbao. We know Athletic Bilbao have been sanctioned by FIFA over transfers, facing a ban until January 2028, but they could look to appeal that decision. Then Rayo Vallecano will be at home against Atletico de Madrid at 6:15 p.m. Levante will be up against Valencia at 8:30 p.m., while Mallorca will welcome Real Betis there. Then in the German Bundesliga, Augsburg will be up against Heidenheim at 5:30 p.m., while at 7:30 p.m. RB Leipzig will take on Wolfsburg. Then in the Italian Serie A, Udinese at 2:30 p.m. will be up against Sassuolo. At 5 p.m., Cremonese will take on Genoa. Parma will be up against Hellas Verona, while at 8 p.m., Torino will take on Bologna. And Napoli at 10:45 p.m. will be up against AC Roma. Another big game there in the Italian Serie A this weekend. Then Le Havre will be up against Toulouse. Lorient will take on Angers. Métis will take on Auxerre, while Lyon will take on Nice there in those games that will be coming your way from elsewhere in Europe. For those that are interested in Barcelona, you're going to have to wait until Monday night at 11 p.m. when they play away to Girona, while in the Italian Serie A, you'll have a game between Cagliari and Lecce, while there'll be an FA Cup game on Monday night still when Macclesfield Town take on Brentford. So that's the action that you should expect from your respective teams in as far as going into the weekend is concerned. Meanwhile, so this is according to Dale Johnson. He says, as Rodri gets charged for criticizing the referee against Spurs, the Premier League's key match incidents panel has unanimously voted Rodri should have been sent off against Spurs for 2 yellow cards. So again, this is something we spoke about. I said he was already in a yellow card when he goes on to foul. I think it was Wilson Odebat, but before Wilson Odebat, he had made a foul. I don't remember. Was it against Matthias Tel? No, not Matthias Tel. He had made a foul against someone. You know, so like I said, he who seeks justice must come with clean hands, and unfortunately, Rodri does not have clean hands. Lord and Man City do not have clean hands. Uh, ah, anyways, anyways, okay, right there. All right. As getting up to speed on some comments made by Peter Crouch in regards to the Premier League title race, and he says, Man City are not the Man City of old, Liverpool aren't, Man United aren't what they have been, Chelsea the same. There is a lack of quality in top areas of the league. The bar has been set high in the past years. Now is a real opportunity for Arsenal. If they don't get over the line, there needs to be more questions answered. That's Peter Crouch making his submission on the Premier League title race in the aftermath of Arsenal's 1-1 draw against Brentford. Meanwhile, our CAF president, that is Patrice Motsepe, he says that there are no plans by CAF to withdraw the AFCON 2027 rights from the 3 East African countries of Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Remember, they've been having meetings over there in Tanzania. A select committee, CAF committee is going to be visiting the 3 countries to assess their preparedness. We know that Uganda has completed the construction of the Hoima Stadium. The John Akbua Stadium construction is ongoing. Refurbishments on Nambole Stadium are going to continue. And then, but also other training facilities. We know that the UPDF Construction Brigade has been handed the mandate to get the Makere as University Stadium ready, or University Playground, not a stadium, ready to be used as a preparation, a ground for AFCON. Then, because you need 3 stadiums. Then in Kenya, the Talanta Stadium is under construction, nearing completion. Then you have the Sarani Stadium, you have the Nyayo Stadium. In Tanzania, you have the Benjamin Mkapa Stadium, you have the Samia Suluhu Stadium that is under construction. There are also other 2 stadiums in Zanzibar. So really, the 2 teams are really, sorry, the 3 countries are really are moving on with preparations for the Africa Cup of Nations. I'm one of those who thinks, particularly for Uganda, where I'm more familiar with the fair share of the landscape, is that I do feel there's been a slowness, especially when it comes to infrastructure readiness, because beyond the stadiums, you need lodging facilities, you need well-paved roads. In some areas, roads are broken down, and you do not feel that bit of urgency to get roads fixed. Within the Kampala metropolitan, they need to be working overtime to get key roads fixed, and also, working on feeder roads to, for traffic reasons and things like that. So that's I think that also needs to be happening really fast, or as fast as possible. There, I'm looking at the artistic impression of the John Akibwa Stadium in Lira City in the northern part of Uganda, that is in Lango sub-region, and it does promise to be a very a very good one. So let's wait and see, as far as things go. So Really? Come on. Come on. Anyways, that's a that's a part of the gist. So a lot of things going on. I was telling you earlier about that decision. I think I've not seen a sane mind in Ugandan football that's been comfortable or that's welcomed the decision taken by FIFA on saying that Vipers lose that game by forfeiture, especially a team that formally communicated beforehand within the mandated 48 hours before the game that they won't be honoring that fixture in an old league format, opposed to that FIFA themselves dropped and then went back to the round robin, you know? So, really, it's one of those decisions that you're going to see on any given day and you're never going to agree to, really. It's such a poor decision. It's very inconsistent. Yes, they may have their discretion to make the kind of decision, but I mean, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. But we have the contestation of egos, and people who think they shouldn't act in the interest of the game, but rather try to prove a point. That's what it feels like. Pedri Bola, how you met? I don't know if he's still around. And how about you, Mr. Tribe? I'm all right. How are you, Pedri? Unfortunately for you, you'll have to wait until Monday night for Barcelona to be back in action against Girona. So you have an entire weekend of enjoying yourself without worrying about whether Barcelona will win or lose. But I hope you're okay. I hope you've had a wonderful Friday. Anyways, unfortunately, you've joined us at the tail end of the broadcast because, like the routine often is, on Fridays we start at 9 p.m. So, but I hope you're okay. I hope you're okay. Funny stuff. I was talking about the decision made by the Federation of Uganda Football Associations in regards to a match that the Uganda Premier League reigning champions and table leaders did not honor. Didn't know the Friday one. Yeah, Friday we come a bit early, 9 p.m. Because I have other routine responsibilities after 10. So that's why we do come early. And then on Saturdays, our routine around 10 a.m., 10:30 a.m., around that time. So we'll be back tomorrow to, talk about it all again. And Rodri is being charged by the FA for his comments in the aftermath of the Tottenham draw. And then Igor Tudo is going to Tottenham Hotspurs as an interim manager. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. But yeah. Meanwhile, speaking of Tottenham, beyond the interim spell, let's revert a little bit back to Tottenham. Beyond the interim spell, they'll be searching for a new manager, and Roberto Di Zerbi is on top of their shortlist. Mauricio Pochettino is another key figure in that, because you remember in that loss to Newcastle, the fans were chanting, chanting to Thomas Frank, you're getting the sack in the morning, and then singing praises of Mauricio Pochettino. So I really do not be surprised if in the summer it's Mauricio Pochettino. The complication about Mauricio Pochettino is that he has a team to handle in the World Cup. That's the USA team. Now, whereas you cannot question his loyalty or priorities with the USA national team, I don't know. I know he wants to come back to Tottenham Hotspurs, but I'm of the view that Tottenham Hotspurs need to look away beyond Mauricio Pochettino, not because he's a bad manager, because when you have a manager who can make you look good with minimal resources, I have a feeling Tottenham Hotspurs will end up back in the same place they've been in 5-7 years after that, really. And that's if it works out. He could come back and maybe it doesn't work out. You never know. Anyway, I understand that the devil is better than the angel. Sorry, I understand that. Is that the saying? The devil you know is better than the angel you don't know. So in this particular case, for lack of a better word, Mauricio Pochettino is the devil, because they sacked him in 2019, only 6 months after he had carried them to the finals of the UEFA Champions League. Why? Because results were not going his way. So what happens if in his return, results still are not going his way? Are they going to wake up and sack him? Are they going to sit down and give themselves an honest talk and say, we need to look at the bigger picture, we need to build a more long-term projects, and look to the example of Arsenal, how they went about it with Mikel Arteta and give, the manager at least, 1.5 years or 2 years to get us back into competitiveness and have a fair, things like that. So really, we'll have to wait and see. Really. We'll have to wait and see. But Igor Tudo's first game in charge will be the North London Derby. Pretty much against Arsenal won't be an easy game, but also the sacking of Thomas Frank perhaps changes the dynamics for Arsenal, because in a week's time, actually next weekend on Super Sunday, that will be the game, and he will be the man in charge. Unfortunately for him, again, he will have to deal with the injury concerns that I mentioned earlier that Thomas Frank was trying to navigate, So, anyways, that's the gist of the conversation tonight. Thank you so much, Pedri. Thank you so much, Jesus. Thank you so much, Pedri. Thank you so much, every single one of you that has managed to catch the conversation tonight. Allow me wish you a blessed night, and let's catch up tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., 10:30 a.m. around that time. We'll meet. Stay blessed and have a wonderful rest of the night. Bye-bye for now.